So what I will be starting today is to start with a talk on maps and how we use them at MAHSA. So we start with a limitation, and satellite imagery can only take us so far, and we use historical maps to offer a powerful alternative, but only once we make them usable through georeferencing that they can be used. Then we extract information from them, apply it to our work, and ultimately use them to better understand and protect heritage at risk. So these are kind of the things that very shortly I'm going to talk about. These maps, the historical maps, provide an important source of information to help understand the past landscape. Their use is complementary to satellite imagery and aerial photos. The earliest imagery, satellite imagery and photos that we have are dated to the second half of 20th century. However, for the parts of the world that we have historical maps available, the information that we can get from them and the dates that they were made are from mid-19th century. So they provide a unique documentation of the landscape before major urbanization and agricultural and industrial development started to disturb lands. In many cases, these maps shows features that present archaeological significance, such as and based on who made those maps and where in what area, they have different features that they're marked on the maps. This is an example of icons that used for survey of India maps that we're using. And these are for documenting elevated grounds or mound features on these maps. And in this example, you can see it's one of the early Harappan sites called Vafadari from Pakistan, that it's kind of very casually marked on the map. So we can use the maps really as a source of information once they're put on a correct place that they should be, and then with the features from them are digitized. Just before starting, I wanted to say that when we talk about maps, there are a few things to bear in mind, that not all maps are useful. They could be good for some researchers and some works and not for all. So you need to think about the coverage, the area that you're working on, how features on the maps are visible or not when you're using them. And that has also to do a lot with the resolution of the maps. And if possible, avoid unclear maps and work on the ones that are more useful. And at the bottom here, I wanted to show an example of the maps because these maps are stored in repositories and archives. A lot of times they've been folded, so there are things on the maps that make the use of them a bit more challenging. I've already shared a document with you on very kind of like a short glossary or guide on how you can go and find historical maps that might be useful for your work online. And these are the places that the maps that they're there are accessible. You can go and download them. One of the ones that I shared are from University of Texas, Perry, Canada. And then we have the National Library of Australia, Trove. And in all of these, as it's explained in the guideline, you search for your area or you can use the keywords and then you can browse and find the maps that you like and then download them. There is also these old maps online that it's an interactive maps as opposed to the others. And then you can explore the maps that they have them interactively using their website as well. Specifically for MAHSA, South Asia, and our work, there is a guideline that also it's added to your Google Drive. It's MAHSA Guide to Survey of India Maps, and it talks in detail about the use of the maps and where are the repositories in the UK that there is a copy of these maps stored. We have information on Cambridge University Library, British Library, and so on. And there are also a few repositories online like Pahar Maps and Zenodo that you can also use to find useful survey of India maps. There might be not all of the areas covered, but you can find you can go and check if they are included from the areas that you're interested in. So I've already mentioned that for South Asia and our work, we use Survey of India maps. There are a range of historical map sources that were created before Survey of India maps, but these maps were often inaccurate by modern calculation and differ and offer different quality and standards. The first map of Survey of India were produced in the mid-18th century when maps started to become more accurate and standardized, and they were generated as part of the Britain's colonial past, and for that reason, that a lot of them are deposited in the UK legal deposit libraries. And there are at different size and scale. We have 1 inch to 1 mile, 1 inch to 2, and 1 inch to 4 miles. When we started the project, we specifically focused to use the 1 inch to 1 mile map series. And these are the maps that were based on the topographic surveys from the mid to late 19th centuries onward. And the resulting maps were produced from the first half of 20th century. So the surveys were mid to late 19th and then produced from the early 20th century. And these maps are specifically useful because they were produced in a very large scale and in a very standardized way. And they also contain a lot of information that could be used for us as archaeologists. As scanned images, when we want to use these maps, they're not useful or usable as they are. If you drag and drop an historical map to your QGIS, this is kind of the base map of the world, and then your map's going to stand somewhere like this. So as the raster raw scanned data, it's not a usable thing. So that's why we have this session today. And what we are doing with georeferencing is to take these maps and align them with the real world coordinates so they can be then analyzed alongside other spatial data that you have in GIS or you can bring into GIS. It is also important, as I said at the beginning, to emphasize that to georeference these maps, you need to also to have some interpretive process and skills to think about the different features that you're going to use from these maps in order to place the points on the map so then you can georeference and have a map that falls or sits exactly where they should be on today's satellite imagery or base maps that you're using. So these Survey of India maps capture landscapes that predate large-scale agricultural and urban expansions. But I mean, we talk about that the changing landscape, but the thing with the maps are there are also features on the map that today they still exist. These can be roads, railways, canals, etc. And these features are the things that you can use for georeferencing. Jack will go into the detail of that. I'm just gonna skip to that part. And what you will be also seeing at our next sessions are after when you have these map scans, then we start to look at features on information that you can find on these maps that can be useful for us as archaeologists. As I mentioned, a lot of these maps contain iconographies that the surveyor used to mark elevated grounds. And these are where the mound settlements and a lot of them prove to be archaeological sites. There are other information, and when you go to your rooms, you're going to start to look at the maps first, and you'll see that there are many other information that you can find from the maps. You can find information about the administrative information, and not all of them, they have this information, I must say, because we're also talking about two different regions, but most of the maps from the Survey of India that we use have include this information, and even they have information about the survey, as I said, and that is important for us to know whether the maps were created using a previous map or where they're published using a survey and kind of what was actually going on the ground when the surveys were done. There is a map sheet number that's when you see how these maps are named when you download them from Google Drive, and the coordinates that Jack will talk to you about that as well. There is also at the bottom of the maps, you sometimes or usually can find information about features or icons that are used on the map, on the maps and the legend on these maps. And this is where there are features that you can use for the georeferencing or for other research and works like the water features that could be useful. And there are also features that could be useful for archaeology, like forts or shrines. And as I said, each maps, they're different and you can find different features useful for your study. So what we do as in MAHSA is we extract this information, all of this from the maps. So we start to georeference them and then start to find the features on the maps and then start to look at their actual location on today's imagery and assess their condition and the location. We not only do that manually, we use machine learning to automatically detect mound features. So for the ones that they use an icons for the mound, those are the ones that we use machine learning to automatically detect and give us back a list of mounds from all of these mounds. And when we then planned our site ground truthing and field validation, we go to the location of these machine learning data that we have and from the mounds that were found on the maps. And these are two examples from Pakistan. My colleague Afifa went to the sites to visit them, to the field to visit them, and both of them they were archaeological and they weren't recorded before in any of the legacy data that we could find. So we use historical maps in our survey planning and we use them as one source and combine them with other available data. So we use survey and legacy data and digitize them and plot them on the map to see if we can add any extra information from the maps to add to the existing information from the legacy data and survey map. And then we also compare them with the satellite imagery. And look at the available satellite imagery and record any most accurate or kind of more recent information from these imageries that we can find. So we bring together all type of different evidences and data from legacy data, maps, remote sensing, and by understanding also the limitation of each, we are using them to build a more informed picture of the past landscape. This is also another example to show that one of the Kutwara or a shine from the maps that weren't recorded in any of the legacy data. When FIFA went and did the field validation, she found it and it's now recorded in our database. And as I said, so kind of like one workflow or kind of aim of the project is to record heritage before it disappears. So we find these maps on the maps either manually or using machine learning, and then start to look at their condition using remote sensing and satellite imagery and see if there are any threats, as you can see in the two on the left and the middle one, the agricultural land expansion. And this is in an area that is under rapid conversion of previously desert land to cultivated land, and especially in the period from 2020 to 21, as we could see on when we looked at satellite imagery. And it's likely that in the next few years that this and many other sites will no longer exist. So what we're trying to do is to document them before they disappear. This is also another example to show you kind of when the map, when the mound is identified from the maps, and then we combine it with satellite imagery. This is going through different years, 2013, 16, 17, And when it gets to 18, then you can see that the amount was leveled to be used as agricultural land. As Rebecca mentioned, then we document all this in the database in MAHSA adapted version of ArcGIS database, and we record all the information about the locations and condition, and from both remote sensing and field documentation that we found about the sites. There also the maps, as Rebecca mentioned, we record them and we add all the information or metadata that they're found with these. Just before finishing, I wanted to show you that as part of the projects with georeference about 1,000, not about exactly 1,436 Survey of India maps. And on the left, you can see the 1 inch to 1 mile map progress. The second one in the middle shows the 1 inch to 2 mile Survey of India maps that were obtained from University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee in 2021. We have used a QGIS map clipper that was developed by Jack to clip these maps, and after clipping, their corners were placed on the correct geographical location to get the maps georeference. And you can go on our website and you can go and see, go to where you can find the progress of all the georeference maps.